How did your friend destroy the friendship? When he became my stepdad. She was having a bad day and decided to tell me what she really thought of me because duck it, I guess. Okay then. Good to know. I won't waste any more of either of our lives then. Good friend and I work at the same place. I buy the business. Now friend works for me. Friend falls hard for coworker. She rebuffs him. He starts stalking her and threatens to commit suicide. Hot mess. Have to let him go. Decided he was too good for the rest of us and only gave us the time of day when he needed something. Unfortunately, because dude is exceptionally charismatic, half of the group sided with him when the other half basically told him to screw off. So, he actually destroyed multiple friendships and still uses the half that stuck with him. Really sad to see, actually. Well, I guess she probably didn't really consider me her friend, but I thought of her as mine. Overheard her talking to another friend about how much she couldn't stand me when I was in the booth listening to people's mics to make sure they were working before opening night of the musical. That was pretty crushing. I haven't confronted her about it, but I just try to avoid her now. She turned all our female friends against me at university because she liked our mutual male friend and she thought he liked me instead of her. He wasn't into her, but it wasn't because he liked me, it was because he was gay. So I lost most of my friends at university in the last year because my moron of a BFF couldn't figure out our other good friend was gay. He literally would say how didn't like the idea of sex with women and told us how he often sleeps in the same bed with other men. He was going through a bad time with the woman he was living with and they split up. I offered to take him on a snow sports holiday. He accepted, but he was struggling for money. So I paid for him to have a place to stay, lift passes, food etc. Basically everything was paid for and all he had to do was get there. I get a call a few weeks before we're going and he says he can't make it. Too much work because his workers had let him down. He ran a building and home improvement business, etc. etc. I say okay. I go away on holiday and whilst I'm away he puts pictures of himself snowboarding in Bulgaria with his workers, the ones who apparently had let him down, saying snowboarding with my mates, another lovely day up the mountain etc. He'd rather go with his workers than the person who met him at 12 years old, who protected him at school and beyond, who lent him money, who was his best man at his wedding, who picked up his stuff when they divorced, who knew him for over 3 decades. etc etc etc. That was the moment I stopped caring for him and refused to speak to him since. Offered to drive me home from a party when I was drunk. Rape me. He kept inviting my ex to every event we would go to. In his defense though, it was his twin sister. He went out with my female best friend, cheated and hurt her, then proceeded to go out with my crush, cheated and hurt her. Ducking hell. Cheated on his amazing girlfriend with the girl he knew I had a crush on. Rubbed it in my face after the fact too. That friendship lasted way too long. Went for my girlfriend right after we broke up. They're married now. I tried to reconcile even. They wouldn't have it. Moved away and blocked me on everything. Now we're not friends I guess. She started screaming over text out of nowhere about how I never make an effort to see her and how I'm too busy seeing other people to care about hanging out with her. She lives over an hour away, and since I don't drive it's expensive to get to her, and she always wanted to do things last minute anyway. She also started making wild accusations and had nothing to back up her claims with, and then she started bringing my deceased mother into the mix. That was the last straw. She never wanted to talk things over like a rational adult. And I don't have time for high school drama in my mid-20s. So I walked away. If she wants to come back and discuss things maturely, I'm here. But if not then I'm over it. Not really my friend but my wife's best friend for 10+ years. I met this guy at work and we had been getting along pretty well for about a year so I decided to invite him and his family over for dinner. As soon as he gets there my wife recognizes him and greets him by name. Turns out he's an ex-boyfriend of my wife's bestie from more than 5 years ago. Whoa. Small world, right? So we have a nice little dinner, drink some beers, our kids play and then they go home. The next day my wife's friend comes to visit and I casually mentioned that he had come over. I honestly forgot they had ever dated, but this girl just totally loses her it and starts crying and screaming at my wife. How could you do this? I thought we were friends. I can't be around you anymore. You betrayed me. So she leaves and gets on Facebook talking all kinds of it about my wife being a slut and how our marriage is doomed to fail because she is so selfish. They haven't talked since and this was about a month ago. My wife is still upset about it and will cry if she has too much to drink. I feel really bad for bringing it up in front of her, but how the hell was I supposed to know she would react like that? I made the decision to move out of state and they flipped out on me. Won't even talk to me now. All because I moved. He liked drugs. Then he liked harder drugs. Then he sold hard drugs out of his place with his 1-year-old. If I knew where he lived, I would call CPS. Duck you. Justin. Borrowing my car dart, then crashing my car, killing my ex-gf and 3 other people on the freeway, then running from the scene of the crime. Dart me finding this out when cops showed up at my house arresting me, telling me I was the driver, only to find out 3 hours later I was nowhere near the car for the last week. Sean knows. Actually he probably doesn't, and that's the issue. We had been friends for 2 decades and I finally realized he wasn't a very good friend. He's more of a narcissistic asshole that prefers friends as long as they center their actions around him. Well, duck that. We had some good times, brother, but I'm not your itch. I spent 2 years publicly fending off a stalker and became very touchy about privacy and paranoid about being safe and alone in my home. My friend, who I hadn't seen in nearly a decade despite several invitations to visit, announces on Facebook that she's going to be vacationing at my house. News to me. I quietly let her know that no, she wouldn't. So much for that lifelong friendship. It was 6th grade and I was kinda realizing that I wasn't straight but that I also wasn't gay. I told her that I had a crush on this older girl in 8th grade. I trusted her as my best friend to keep her mouth shut and not to judge me for anything. Instead she told everyone including my parents and the girl that I was a lesbian and then told me she couldn't be my friend because I would abuse her. Best friend of 8 years. I moved about 6 hours away from home to go to college and every time she'd come to visit me she would make the trip and crash somewhere else. Just coming to party. Wouldn't make any effort to see me. On my 21st she actually surprised me, which was like the nicest thing she's ever done, by coming down but brought her pose boyfriend. We made plans to go out that night so I told my new boyfriend and housemates that I was going out with my best friend and to leave without me while I waited for her. After getting ready for 2 hours, making us apps and cocktails, I tried to get a hold of her for like 5 hours. Nothing. Turns out she decided to lay in bed with her BF at someone else's house. Never said sorry or talked about it again. Spent my 21st alone. Too embarrassed to tell my other friend's BF that my best friend ditched me. He started dealing in absolutes. The Phantom Menace was his favorite Star Wars movie. He shot himself in the head. I miss him terribly. I still think of you every day, Tyler. I was upset because my other best friend was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer in her early 30s. I don't give a shit about your friend with cancer, says my best friend of 15 years. That was the last time I talked to her, but I still miss her every day. She appropriated my personality to the point where I heard her expressing some of my most unique and totally weird, because, hey, sometimes I am weird, opinions and thoughts as her own. Then she stole one of my shoes and slashed my tire. Okay, bye bye then. She punched me in the boob. We were inseparable BFF soulmates and I loved her. I even joined choir so we could hang out an extra period. Well, she started treating me like garbage in front of her rude choir friends and threatened one day as a joke in front of them that she'd punch me in the boob. I told her if she did it, I'd walk away and never speak to her again because I didn't like how she was treating me. That's the only time I have ever followed through on a threat so serious. Sure enough, she did it and we didn't talk for 3 years. Even then, it was just a nasty message from her about how stupid I was. I'm still a little sad about it, 10 years later, but it was a good choice on my part. A good friend from high school came back into my life via Facebook a few years ago. We reconnected and became inseparable. watching movies and playing video games every weekend. Our kids became close friends as well. One night I was watching TV with my wife of 20 years and he, my ex-friend, started texting my wife. He said he had a problem and needed her help with. She met with him and he confessed he loved her and watched her all the time. He had several candid pics on his phone of her, mostly from behind. He showed her to prove his love. He said he'd take better care of her than I did. She was disgusted and left to tell me immediately. I called him to discuss it but he wouldn't answer. It's been 3 years and he hasn't contacted our family. Lifelong friendship ruined. He thought it was cool to start hanging out with my bully. Never talked to him again. Her boyfriend felt threatened by me and asked her not to have contact with me. In order to get on his good side she did as he asked. I'm rather disappointed. Constantly criticizing everything I did, as well as making fun of every mistake I made around him. It got to the point where the meme in the friend group was that I was wrong about anything and everything. He tried reconnecting with me a year or so after I stopped talking to him. Told him to eat a D. Literally shot me in the back of the head. We were hunting this past season and a bird flew overhead while he was sitting behind me in the canoe. Not sure how he thought this would be a good idea but he sent 2 shots whirling over my head and a piece of bird shot caught me in the back of the head. When I regained my hearing and yelled at him, he got mad at me for telling him what to do. Needless to say we haven't spoken since then. When I realized how itty she was to me, always bringing me down and making everything about herself, I was already at a very low point in my life contemplating suicide and disappearing. When I confided in her she brushed it off and didn't talk to me. I didn't need an answer from her or for her to cure my depression. I just needed a friend and she wasn't there for me like I was for her and that hurt the most. That day was the beginning of the end for us. It just took 2 more years for me to grow the courage to walk away from that relationship. She's one of those I'm not like other girls. Said she hates drama but will always gossip about her friends and talk badly about them behind their back, including myself I'm sure. Will enter relationships with guys and then complain they aren't up to her standards. Example, I'm a good person. I deserve better and not be treated this way. She said this after an ex couldn't get to her place to take care of her when she was sick. Runs through relationships with her friends like clockwork. She hasn't done one thing per se but a lot of things and I'm just tired of it all. Best friend through teenage years into late 20s. Roommates. We were both best man at each other's wedding and then business partners. He stole a ton of money from the business and stopped paying our bills. He was using our money to fund drug dealers' car rentals each week. My guess is that he was getting free drugs out of it. He also used company money to fund his entire wedding, which was an absolute nightmare. He didn't used to be like that but meeting and marrying that woman changed him. Now he's 32. Moved back home, live with his family. Divorced and miserable. I can't tell you how much I hate that man. After a long time of constantly criticizing me and making me out to look like the bad guy, they accused me of something serious that I didn't do. I blocked them immediately because before, they'd use other phones to try to contact me. Kimberly blamed me for talking in the hall on the way back from lunch in 5th grade even though it was actually she and Chelsea. I got time on the fence at recess as punishment. It's been 16 years, but I still remember. Thanks a lot, Kimberly. Told me extensive details on her sex life. Harassed me to talk to her every second I was home and then, upon me asking for some space as I had work to do and was going through scary medical stuff, threw a fit and insisted that I never listened to her and only ever talked about myself. Never talk to that selfish itch again. Hope you never managed to convince that poor boy to let you blow him. You cosive twat. My former friend group hates my current so she didn't mind me hanging out with them because they were still my friends and she's not the kind of person to tell me who I can and can't be friends with. They, on the other hand, kept telling me that I could do better and questioning why I was even with her. It all came to a head when they gave me an ultimatum of us or her. I was very direct and told them her. I told them she would never put me in this position and they're not really friends if they think they can manipulate me like that. Haven't spoken to them since and am happy with my current so. Getting married. I helped him move into her condo and she just stood there with her arms crossed. She wouldn't drive him to pick up the moving truck or to drop it off, and she refused to help move anything. After moving into her place, he spent more nights at my house than hers, and when he did spend nights there she didn't. I redid my guest bedroom into a room for him at his request. I spoke with my girlfriend and son about him moving in. He asked if he could live with me over and over. So finally I told him to just move in. He moved all his stuff into my place, and before spending one night here, she bought a house and he asked her to marry him. He told me he didn't love her. He didn't want to marry her, but he felt at 30 he was supposed to be married or his life wasn't going anywhere. I had spent 2 years trying to help him through this tough situation, and it took a toll on my own relationship. I walked away from almost 20 years of friendship and haven't looked back.